Hey guys, how's it going? It's Krista here, and today I'll be making a holiday theme card using two of my favorite inking techniques. Just to start off with the background, I will be using a background stamp and a stamping tool. And I'm going to emboss this image onto my background before I color it. And before I emboss it, I'm going to come in with a paintbrush just to wipe off any of the debris, followed by an anti-static agent, either a dryer sheet or an anti-static powder tool, just to make sure that I get really nice, crisp, clean lines in my embossing. I'll be using some Versamark ink to ink up my stamp. This is the image that we're going for with our background stamp. And I'll be using some Ranger white embossing ink powder on top of my Versamark ink. And to set that, I'll come in with my heat gun. I'm just going to keep the heat over the embossing powder until it melts, and it's hard to see in camera, but you can definitely see it in person. To create the color of our background, I'm coming in with some Uncharted Mariner Distress ink and just squishing it on the side of my craft mat, spraying it with some water, and then heat drying it. You can do this as many times as you want to get the amount of color that you want. And spraying with water and pressing it down will give you a different look as opposed to if you set your background into the ink and drag it. Setting it down will give you more of a spotted appearance, whereas dragging it will give you a little bit more of a solid image. So I came in with some Mermaid Lagoon after my Uncharted Mariner, and I'm just varying how much water that I use. And using the same technique, I'm coming in with some peacock feathers. The important part is just to make sure that you dry it with your heat gun, or just let it dry in between each inking. The thing to keep in mind is when you re-wet that ink, it will react a little bit further. So it will change a little bit. To add a bit of color, I'm going to use a few inks all at once: picked raspberry, shaded lilac, spun sugar, wilted violet, and seedless preserves. And this is what I like about the little mini inks, is that I can use many in one inking, whereas I find the regular size ink pads would be too large for this technique, doing many colors at once. And I'm going to add a lot of water to these inks on my glass mat, but I don't want that water to transfer over onto my paper. I added a lot of water because I want the inks to move and mingle in a little bit more of a natural manner, but I don't want the ink on my background to react further. So I'm taking a heat gun just to dry a little bit of that water, but also to mix it around, mix the colors around, and give it a little bit more movement. This time I'm making sure that it's really nice and dry because I'm done adding my colors, and I want to cut out a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 stitch rectangle die cut from this background that I'll be using as a card front, and just running that through my die cut machine. Coming in next with the Heart of Christmas die set, and I'm only going to use the shadow die today. I find it easier to cut out the die cut first, and then I'm going to ink it and color it with the second ink technique. I'll take the tree from the corresponding stamp set and place that into my stamping tool. But seeing as my die cut is so small, I'm going to take a piece of rounded up tape just to secure my die cut to the stamping tool so it doesn't shift when I stamp it. And take the stamp to line it up. Pick it up with my stamping tool. And again, I'll prep my cardstock as I did before with the paintbrush, just getting rid of all those debris, and then the anti-static agent. I'm coming in again with some Versamark ink onto my stamp. And I'll be sure to apply even pressure. It doesn't show in camera, but in person, if you look closely at your cardstock, you can see if your entire image has been stamped evenly. And if not, you can just give it another quick stamp in the stamping tool. That's a nice thing that I like about the stamping tools, is it makes it easy to restamp. Now, seeing as I've touched the sticky tape and the front of my cardstock is inked up with Versamark ink, I don't want to touch the front of the image. So I'm going to grab my cardstock from the piece of tape, using some Wow Vintage Gold embossing powder. And my piece of tape did fall off, so when you come in with that heat tool, make sure to either hold your cardstock by your tape, or be really careful when holding the edge of the cardstock because it can get quite hot using that heat tool. And again, you can see when it's set in person as it melts and it changes color a bit. I'm going to take that die cut and tape it down just so it doesn't shift, and bring in the same color from the background of our card front, Uncharted Mariner in Distress ink. And you can do this one of two ways. You can take the ink pad and smush it directly onto your stamped image, or as I'm doing here with the blending tool, just blending lots of color all over the entire image. And I chose to do it this way because I found that if I took the ink pad and just smushed it on top, because it's a new ink pad, it was a little bit too juicy, and it put down too much ink that it didn't change much when I reacted it with the water. You can be as light-handed as you want for this, or you can be as heavy-handed as you want. And I'm just going to come in with some water, and I'm painting it over the entire stamped image. And watch how as it gets lighter as you move the water across the distress ink. It changes even further as you take your heat tool and add heat to it and it dries. It does get even lighter. Now that we've taken some of the color away, we're going to add some of the color back in. I'm coming in with some Distress ink Pink Picked Raspberry and adding a little bit of water and using it as a watercolor paint. You can use a paintbrush or you can use a water brush, whatever you have. I prefer the feel of these brushes. And I'm just going in and I'm adding a little bit of color to the bottom of each heart, but you can easily add it to the top, you can add it to one side, you can color the whole thing, it's up to you. And after I've colored all of the hearts in on the bottom with the color that I want, I'm going to come back with a little bit of water and work that color up the entire heart. Just to finish it up, I'm going to dry it with my heat tool. You can also let it dry, but watch closely how the gradient changes as you dry it. To color the background, I'm using Lucky Clover in Distressed ink, using the same technique, picking up a little bit of ink with my brush and a little bit of water and working it all around the hearts. I'm choosing to put color all around, but you can definitely do a gradient here as well, with lots of color at the bottom and less at the top. You can do it darker right around the hearts and then kind of fade out to the middle. You can have it darker in the middle and fade out to the hearts, whatever you prefer. And I really want that star on the top to pop, so I'm coming in with some Ranger Perfect Pearl in Perfect Gold, and with a little bit of water and making it into a bit of a paste before I paint it onto the star. This stuff really lasts forever. I bought it last year and I use it on pretty much every card that I make in some way. And when this dries, it doesn't come off. It is the resin that's activated by water. And when it dries, it stays put, even through the mail. I didn't initially color the trunk of the tree because I thought I might want to use my hand to secure the tree from the tree portion, and I didn't want to rip off the bottom part. So I'm just finishing that up in the end, just adding some Uncharted Mariner and then reacting it with water to make it a little bit lighter. I won't be adding any other additional color to the trunk. To assemble our card front, I took the base that we cut out using the first technique, the tree using our second inking technique, as well as a lawn fawn snow frame die with pearlescent vellum. And I glued those together using liquid glue before attaching it to a card front. And this card is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And there you have our finished card. Thank you so much for stopping by. See you next time. Bye.